what has gone on in Ghana, in Nigeria, in Kenya, right? Protests. I live in the UK. The last 2 weeks has been protests and then riots. See, but one thing I've noticed is that it's very difficult for authorities to sit down and admit that there are structural issues. It's as if they find it extremely difficult to actually tell themselves the truth. And if they can't tell themselves the truth, they can't tell you and I the truth. Hello. Nice to meet you. Finally.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kenny.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Yourself?
Good. I'm very well. I'm very well. How is Ghana?
We are coping and managing by grace. It used to be the most peaceful country in West Africa, but now Sierra Leone has taken over. So we have to strive.
Okay.
We have to strive very.
Okay. Oh, so Sierra Leone right now is more peaceful place in West Africa?
West, according to literature and according to report.
Interesting. Interesting. So what's happening in Ghana that you guys have lost your number one position?
Well, I think basically because of some violent protests, especially on campuses and during electioneering periods, we were exposed to some form of violent threats, and also there were alarming rates of some ethnic and tribal conflicts. So I think it decreased the stability in the country to some extent, but I will not say significantly.
Yeah.
And by grace, the institutions and the personnel, the state security personnel and apparatuses have been able to work their way around it, and we have some relatively peaceful and stable atmosphere.
See what is going on, what has gone on in Ghana, in Nigeria, in Kenya, right? Protests. Okay. I live in the UK. The last 2 weeks has been protests and then riots. See, but one thing I've noticed is that it's very difficult for authorities to sit down and admit that there are structural issues. It's as if they find it extremely difficult to actually tell themselves the truth. And if they can't tell themselves the truth, they can't tell you and I the truth. What do you think?
Basically, that's the truth. And one of the most reasons or the prominent reasons for this protest is the trust issues. There's a trust deficit between the state and citizens.
Trust issues.
Because, we expect that there should be a social contract between government and the citizens. But after reposing power and confidence in them to engage or deliver with their social goods, then they tend rather to abuse the power or the confidence given to them.
Wow.
This causes citizens to rebel or revolt against the status quo, sometimes violently, sometimes peacefully.
I mean, hey, nobody wants a violent protest. See, it's not to anybody's interest, okay? Especially people who are not violent, okay? So we don't want it. But this thing happened, just like you said, the contract between the ordinary citizens and the government, it's mostly the government who renege their own part of it. And they find it difficult to admit that they have failed, because they have the power. They try to force us to walk on their own path as if they are doing the right thing and we are wrong. I don't know. Yes. What do you think?
Basically, that's the issue. And they feel, most of them feel, we don't really understand the reality or what is governance or what should be best for us. But most at times you come with us with policies and suggest some developmental or security agenda for the well-being and development of the state as a whole.
Yeah.
And in your delivery, we see some lapses or gaps or challenges.
Yeah.
And we try to identify them. And you tend to give us counter reactions that make us feel ignorant. We don't know what is good for us. We don't know what is best for us. That's what leads some section of the country to take the law into their own hands and say, if you have established this platform or this medium or these promises, you've given us this promise and you are failing, and we are trying to redirect you to the focus, and you are failing to identify or realize it, like you said, then we have to use other means to give you a caution or redirect you back to the focus. But unfortunately, sometimes those other alternative or means come with dire security and developmental consequences and humanitarian crisis.
Yeah. See, Ebenezer, see what you are talking about that is going on in Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya is also going on in the UK. And I get it that, see, the thing I see is that all of these places, all of these countries going through this difficulty, the main reason why this protests and sometimes riot happen is the same thing. Same thing. People in power do not want to admit their feelings. See, it's not that they couldn't do what they told us they would do, is that they don't even want to admit it. So, Ebenezer, thank you for being here. See, we haven't introduced you to my audience, but I'm sure they will love this little chat. So, Ebenezer, please introduce yourself to my audience. Tell them who you are and what you do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kenny, once again for the opportunity and privilege to be on your podcast today. I am Ebenezer Anderson, a current graduate research associate at the Legon Center for International Affairs and Diplomacy, LECIAD at the University of Ghana, and also a regional security analyst for DevSec Analytic International Limited. Basically, I'm into research and policy making, and my areas are in the field of international relations, diplomacy, climate change, gender, conflict, peace, and security. Broadly, my focus lies on how global security or developmental paradigms have implication on national, regional, and continental frameworks and processes of human rights, development, and security. So basically, that's my area of focus. Largely, I've gotten the privilege and the opportunity to work with some international, regional, and national.
So sorry, I lost you for some seconds, but it's okay. We understand what you do, and I will tell you, the work you and people like you do is very, very vital at this time. Okay, because there's so many things, like we alluded to at the beginning, going on all over the world and in Africa. And for me, my interest is that young people in Africa, well, I don't want to sound like people in politics who say they don't understand what is going on. Okay, I don't want to sound that way. But sometimes they don't understand some intricacies of the dynamics of what is going on. Okay, they know what is happening in their lives. Okay, but how to handle those things in a multi-ethnic, multicultural environment is a complex thing. Okay, and that's why people like you, we need people like you to help us analyze those things and guide us in some ways where we are failing. Okay, so see, I hear a lot of Africans talk about democracy is not African, right? Okay, but yes, maybe we didn't develop the robust big democracies, but I know, for example, in my native village, okay, the way my culture, our traditions run the town, the village, is democracy. Yes, we don't vote for the king, we don't vote for his chiefs, but the way they run things, democratic. Okay. So what I want you to ask is this: what is your general view about democracy as a form of government, and is it suitable to improve security and development in Africa?
Thank you very much, Mr. Ekene, for this question. It's a very thought-provoking question. Before we have to understand the intricacies, we have to go back a little bit into history. So, like you said, most often than not, people have been saying democracy is Western or is foreign and is not typical of Africa. And most people try to misconstrue the notion of the concept to suggest that democracy began recently or with this contemporary Western states. Yeah. But tracing literature, we could see that democracy existed way back in 508 BC from the cities of Athens. They were brought up the system of democracy, yeah, to kind of blend or challenge the aristocracy that was existing at that time. That's the rulership by the nobles, the kings, yeah, or the moral authorities, the religious leaders. So democracy didn't begin with this contemporary Western states for it to be even coined or termed by some people as Western democracy. Aside that, we have to get a meaning or an understanding from the concept. And basically, I like to go with what Abraham Lincoln says about democracy. Okay. Democracy is people, by the people, and to the people. Yeah. So it means that the whole caption or concept Abraham Lincoln wants to explain is that democracy is the power of the people. So it's giving an inclusivity of the people also in governance. What are some of the characteristics of democracy? Democracy encourages or promotes free elections, promotes citizens' participation, protection of human rights, and it also leads to transparency and accountability on the part of the people we repose confidence and trust into to rule the country. Yeah. So in this form, I would say that it is suitable to promote development and security to some extent. But we should know that there are types of democracy, and there is a way that we go about it, or we are going about it, that maybe is not working right in the African context.
Yes.
So we have like the electoral college system, where they say that there is a group of body of representatives who decide who should become the ruler of the country, rather than political powers going to campaign to a majority of people and polarize their votes at certain regions or areas where they will get majority of votes to become leaders. So the electoral college system helps to determine who becomes the president of the day. We have the coalition system where there's power sharing among the executives, as seen within the German system. And we have the federal and parliamentary system too, which is mostly typical of most African states, where national citizens vote to decide who becomes the president of the day. So there are different types of democracy. The one you adopt to suit your preference and your developmental or security agenda becomes what is suitable for the day.
Yeah.
But let's look at the trajectory of democracy on the African country.
Okay.
In literature, prior to colonialism, there's this misconstrued notion that Africans were terra nullus, or were not discovered, or we didn't have a structured form of system of governance or system of administration, like you said. But when you go to our villages and when you go to our communities, there existed some centralized or established form of governance. But they will tell you that prior to colonialism, we didn't have in literature. And that's a fallacious assertion that is put across in most Western literature. So we had a different system of governance, which were mostly in the form of rulership by traditional leaders or by the moral authorities like the religious leaders, some by priests and priestesses and all those things. So that's been the nature of democracy. And they will tell you that before the coming of the Europeans or colonialism, we didn't have any centralized form of governance. But after colonialism, the impact of colonialism brought about a centralized form of government. And we also adapted democracy because of the colonial masters who imparted their system of governments on us. So, yes, after colonialism, there was power struggle, and it led to a lot of military men or personnel wanting to struggle for independence. So we had a lot of leaders on the continent, African continent, being the military personnel. And obviously, we didn't see the dividend of democracy at that time, because there were a lot of human rights abuse, there were a lot of economic deprivation, and there were a lot of lack of accountability. So from the 1990 onwards, democracy gained much prominence on the African continent, largely because the UN, the IMF, and the World Bank made it a prerequisite for developmental assistance. So before you get any developmental assistance, you should try adhere to some principles and values of democracy, or you try and be. So this made democracy flourish on the continent till in recent time we are seeing some recessions. Some people call it backsliding of democracy on the African continent. So what I would say is that democracy has the potential, the ability of promoting prosperity, improve security, and development for a nation or a region or a state. But how it is adapted, how it is handled, and the dangers of democracy in Africa in recent time is that we've adapted the practice, but not the most times we are not adhering to the core principles and values. So the reason why people would like to be a terrorist or insurgents group to challenge the status quo is because the social delivery that we expected to see from democracy is not happening. There is no proper accountability from the leaders. So yes, and we've also seen that the nature of politics we are having, the nature of politics is engendering more conflicts, tendencies, rather than unity and harmony or peaceful atmosphere that will make development and democracy thrive. So we have politics of, especially when you come to Africa, and it's one of the reasons that literature has identified is preventing most women from even veering or trying to go into politics, because we have politics of insults, politics of, we have politics of propaganda, which incites people against it, and we have spreading of fake news. We have, when it comes to the Ghana perspective like this, there are a lot of vigilante groups that spring out or were formed out of some of these characteristics I've mentioned.
Yeah.
They are doing that. Our leader is saying, all die, be die, or will not allow the election to be real. We'll use all means possible to ensure, but there are institutions, there are constitutional psychic that work for democracy to thrive. So to ensure that democracy thrive on the African continent, we should have very robust democratic institutions. And there should be a form of commitment from the political leaders and the citizens to ensure that we are committed to the institutions and the constitutional psychic of the country. That's when we will see the actual dividends of democracy. Other than that, we'll continue to be experiencing what we are experiencing now.
Oh, of course. Of course. See, there are so many things you alluded to, we talked about in this, but I want to pick something. See, be able to use all the institutions of democracy effectively. There's something that we can't do without. The ability and willingness to talk with each other continuously. See, we talk with each other to resolve issues. Because if we stop talking, what will happen? We'll go to war. Okay? So we don't want it. We want to continuously talk, argue things, debate things. Okay? That's why that thing, the American First Amendment, freedom of speech, is very vital. Now, I know America is unique in that by making it the First Amendment in their constitutions. But does any African country have that thing called freedom of speech entrenched in their constitution?
Okay. I don't know for many African countries, but for Ghana, there are acts that support it. The problem with Africa is that we have the frameworks, we have the conventions, we have the legal laws or acts that support all of these things that you are talking about.
Yes.
So, but the implementation is where we mostly falter. And we could see that there's even mass suppression of media freedom. So it's not only citizenship, freedom of speech for the citizens, but even media, which is supposed to be the presumed fourth arm of government that will put
pressure on
arm
the
of government is checked. It's sometimes suppressed. Yeah, it's sometimes suppressed. So with that, then it means that the freedom of expression is also suppressed to some extent. And when that happens, then it means the leaders are becoming somewhat autocratic, or they can maneuver their way, abuse power, and go scot-free.
Yeah. See, that's why it's necessary for our countries, in my view, to put it, not only enact laws, but put it at the forefront of our primary documents, our constitutions. Because if it's there, then no government can just wake up because you are saying something they don't like and say no, and that's what happens in most countries where they are not entrenched in the constitutions. Anyway, let's move on. You alluded to the conflicts in on our continent. Now, we You are a Ghanaian, I'm a Nigerian. So we're both Western Africans. But on a part of Africa, we have had 3 or 4 government change by military in the last 3 years. Yep. Okay. Now, see, when I talk about this, I try to be as open as possible. But tell me, what is your view of the juntas that took over Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso? Yes.
Burkina Faso.
Yeah. And where do you see ECOWAS going? Okay, with this division, because right now those countries say they don't want to be members of ECOWAS anymore. Okay, so what's your view on that matter?
Okay, so basically, most of those juntas argued that there are security crises and developmental challenges in their country. That's why they want to revolt or rise against the status quo to ensure that there's improved security and improved development. But the question we need to ask ourselves is, what is literature and reports suggesting in recent times? Have there been improvement in the development or quality of life of the citizens after they took over?
Okay.
And has there been improved security? Burkina Faso continues to be the hub of terrorism, and the humanitarian crisis and the human security consequences continue to be dire. And according to the International Human Rights Index, we can see that the crisis have exacerbated even more than when the politically elected leaders were in power. To the extent that now even their alliance to the Wagner group now is also being questioned or come under some scrutiny, because currently, especially in Mali, they experience some death on their military and some security experts in the country. So we are asking ourselves, if they argued for this position and they've taken over power and we are not seeing any significant change, are they justified in their actions or in their view that they're resolving the crisis in the country? For the stance of ECOWAS, I believe in this globalized international system, regional integration is very key to address some of the developmental and security challenges we face in state, because obviously resources are limited. That's why there should be a need for pool of resources. So I think there should be much effort done on the part of ECOWAS to bring in these states back to the integration. And aside bringing them in, because at the end of the day, the reason why I argue this way, at the end of the day, if they decide not to join the union and they are not able to address effectively the security or developmental challenges they face now, the consequences will spill over to other states and it will affect the whole region.
Exactly.
So whether we like it or not, whether they are part of ECOWAS clandestinely or openly in addressing their security threats, because of regional security complex, where a security threat in one country or one state can trickle down to other countries. For instance, when we take the terrorism situation in Burkina Faso by Boko Haram right now, it has trickled down to Chad and Germany, Chad, Niger, and Cameroon. So it's not only affecting Nigeria as a whole, but now Boko Haram is spreading their tentacles to other states.
Wow.
And it will boil down to the same issue in Mali. Mali, it's now going to Burkina Faso, and we are having, because Mali has a very vast land. So they have a lot of neighboring countries. So any security threat in Mali will affect significantly other countries.
Yeah.
Especially when there is displacement and other refugee crisis. So aside helping them to come back and join the regional
Union.
integration bloc, union, is my humble opinion or appeal that the political leaders should try and conform or respect the regional norms and frameworks. Because in the past, ECOWAS have been very successful in dealing with some of these crises.
Yeah.
When it comes to terrorism or civil war, we saw it in Liberia, we saw it in Syria, even Gabon, when we saw it when there was an election, the president was overpowered, how ECOWAS intervened in Gambia. In Gambia, I should say, how ECOWAS intervened.
Yes.
So ECOWAS has been successful in dealing with some of these crises, but it will only be successful in its operation or in its mandate if the leaders have the political will to commit to the regional frameworks and norms. Because when a country or a state is suspended and other countries continue to engage in diplomatic engagements for the sanctions that are being meted out not to be felt by the states to realize their need to go back to democratic priorities and values, then obviously others will see it as an opportunity to also chart the
same path. Yes. I hope ECOWAS leaders would be humble enough, okay, because humility is a big part of leadership. I hope our ECOWAS leaders will be humble enough, and the leaders of juntas also be very humble enough to sit down and talk about these things, because division affects everybody. You know, in this security matter, it's a very, very dicey thing. You know, so yeah. See, is there any future without France alliance within this Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger? You know, I mean, they have been so reliant on France for a long, long time. So yeah, what do you think?
Okay, so basically, I argue from these 2 points of views that good politics bring good governance, and politics sometimes arises from policies. So we have the public policy and the foreign policy. So how strategic you be in your public policy and your foreign policy can lead to the development or the success of a state or a region. So I would say yes, these states can thrive effectively or be successful without the alliance of France, but then there should be some strategic diversification in their global partnership or bilateral international relations. The international community is based on interdependency. So in this global international system, you can't find, and they have very strategic partnership with other states rather than France. They may be able to succeed or thrive well. In addition to that, they should also be able to join the regional economic communities or RECs to also facilitate their process. There should be that bonding between the RECs and the states for them to be able to address some of the immediate crises they are facing now. They should be also be able to empower their citizens or ensure inclusivity. And there should be more focus on sustainable development rather than the immediacy. So as part of the projects they are taking right now, they shouldn't only depend on their addressing the short-term crisis, but they should think about the future of the countries. And they should encourage citizens, they should ensure the decision-making process in the country. That's when some don't feel frustrated to revolt against partnership with CSO to ensure that they streamline the part of governance when governance is veering off. So all this will culminate in leading to their success. So yes, they can survive, but they must be very strategic in their public and foreign policy. But like I said, what reports and literature suggest so far is that with the exception of Niger, which is thriving, other states are not doing fairly well after taking over. So there's a need for them to reconsider their approach, their decisions, their alliance, and even their policies to ensure. And it seems France too is their colonial master. After a cooperation agreement with France to continue to ensure security development and some economic uh, assistance to these states. So I think if they want to continue having engagement with France, there should be a revision of that cooperation, because some people feel that cooperation gave too much power and resources to
Yeah,
France to exploit, to continue
see,
exploiting them,
everybody
that
thinks so.
they are not
Okay.
able to see the dividend of that cooperation.
Yes,
So,
yes. I believe so too. Okay, I believe so.
yeah,
It was skewed in one direction too much.
yeah.
It's not good. It's not good.
One direction. So,
Yeah.
so maybe there could be a revision of that cooperation to ensure that, yeah, they realize the dividends of the other aspects, because frankly speaking, like I said, Africa, we have the population, we have the resources. It's left to how we have, so that we realize the dividends of them.
Yeah.
Because I've given some of the characteristics of democracy already. To
Yeah.
some large extent, when you check ancient Athens, which I talked about, they were one of the strongest and prosperous states during the ancient times. And currently, if we also want to look at America, which has experienced democracy for over 2,000 years, even with America, they still have challenges and crises with their democracy, but
Yeah.
they continue to be one of the most prosperous states in the contemporary international system. To the extent that even currently, a running presidential mate was nearly assassinated. Some claim it was staged, some claim it
Who?
was a bad sign of.
What state?
I'm talking about the near assassination of Donald Trump. This
Oh,
should tell
come
you
on. It's
that,
not. It wasn't staged. It wasn't staged.
yeah,
Let's leave that.
most people are. Yeah. So this suggests that democracy is not all perfect system. It comes with some challenges,
Yeah.
which
Yeah. It
will
does.
give a test to the system, or puts you on the toes to revise or watch other aspects of the system. But
Yeah.
it doesn't mean the system is that bad or that evil, as some people are trying to demonize it and suggest that it's not good for Africa. Because I can suggest that
I
most of
mean,
the prosperous states
see,
in the contemporary international system are thriving on the principles of democracy and good governance.
you see, because see, I will say this. When it comes to democracy, I also have my issues. Okay, like anybody who thinks, I have my issues. But what I came up with is that democracy so far is the most stable for sustainable development, is the best for security, is the best for to reduce conflict, because in essence, very few states that are governed democratically go to war. You see, I will suggest this book for my audience. This book, I've forgotten it, but oh my God, what's his name now? Highlight with data. He analyzed the benefits of democracy. See, democracy is not perfect at all. It is not. But nothing human beings do is perfect. We are human beings. Okay. But see, for us, because many of us don't realize that we are so diverse, the only way we can stay together without fighting each other every day is working on the path of democracy. Otherwise, how many tribes do you guys have in Ghana? In Nigeria, we have over 300 tribes. Without us having something bind us together as a country, most of us will be fighting and the next tribe. See, people don't understand that that's what happened in Europe for the first nearly 2,000 years. All they did was fight each other before they now came together, they integrated and became states. Before then, all they did was fight. Even after, in the process of forming states, all they did was fight. That's why it ended in the Second World War. They were fighting each other. So I don't want us in Africa to fight each other because it will be devastating. You know, so yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. See, I've gained a lot of tips from talking to you. I mean, I'm so happy. At least we have people like you who are looking at all these things in our countries and our environments. And we need, see, one thing I say is this: we don't read very much, and I believe it's a flaw. Okay, it's a flaw. We need to encourage more people to read, but also we need to encourage people to write. Ebenezer, I believe you have one or two things you can pen into. You can write a few books about regional security, democracy. Hey, we want to see you write something. Think about it. We really want, I really want you to, I want maybe in two years, I pick up a book on democracy in West Africa and I see your name. I really, really want that. So, see, you know, from this, you know, I love books. So I want you to recommend a few books for my audience to buy and read. So recommend 5 books.
Okay, so I think the first book I want to recommend is Why Nations.
Oh, okay.
Why States.
Yeah.
I think it was written in 2012 by
I have it in my library, my shelf right there. Mm-hmm. Why nations fail, right? Yes.
Why nations fail.
Yes,
so
good one.
It's basically talk about economic and political institutions being the fate of state prosperity and security.
Yeah.
So it gives that awareness and that mindset of how we should foster our economic and political institutions if we actually want to prosper. And there's this book too I like recommending for young people, especially who want to see. It was written by our own first president of Ghana and one of the pioneers of the African Union, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. He calls it conscientism. Yeah, it was written in 1964.
Conscientism.
Yes. Okay. It's actually to decolonialize us. Most often than not, there is this argument that colonialism is the main reason why we are in these states. And
well,
it has
I don't believe so. Personally. Personally, I don't believe so. But see, that book, I would like to get it and read it. Yes.
Okay, so I can come with some facts. Come with some facts and some reasons why.
Just see, you know what? Just tell my audience the books. See, I have you on my podcast. See, I will be talking from time to time, and then me and you will sit down and talk about all these things. But I want to read the book first, so that I will know what he's talking about. Yeah.
Okay. And I also recommend Becoming.
Becoming
an advocate of gender studies.
Okay. Becoming, right? Okay.
become written by Michelle Obama about the
Oh, okay.
personal.
Oh, I
Yeah,
have 4 books of Obama in my shelf here. Yeah.
how she has to sacrifice some dreams, principle, and how to align or support Obama to become the president, even give her the opportunity to become a president. Sometimes the future looks a little blurry, but we don't need to give up or lose hope. And we should also try and always see life as a process rather than an event.
Okay.
Most often than not, what is driving the youth of the continent or making us go astray is that most people want to see prosperity immediately or at a
No.
There's the process. They don't the process. They would just want to see the dividends of whatever others have taken so much years to build in their life without any efforts, any sacrifices, any innovation. So I think that book will also be very helpful to build, refocus, reshape, and rescope the psychic of most youths to know how to strategize or organize their life into achieving long-term goals.
Good.
I also
see maybe our government would need that book, because most of them focus on short-term achievements.
Yes.
Yeah.
I also recommend The Dead Aid by
The
Dambisa
Dead Aid. Okay.
Dead Aid.
By who?
Yeah. So most often than not, because Dambisa Moyo. Most often than not, because we've attributed our perils and our crisis now to the vicissitudes of colonialism, we tend to Western or colonial to make reparation for whatever it's because Africa has received over $1 trillion of dollars of aid. Yeah, but we are not seeing any dividends of that aid reception. So she argues from the perspective, is the aid really aiding us? What needs to be done? How should it be restructured? Because some have even argued that aid reception are rather engendering a lot of corruption and bad governance on the continent. So there's a need
I argue with that.
There's a need to reshape it and see. And finally, coming from a Christian perspective or religious or moral grounds, I also recommend that people should add to their religious book. It could be the Bible, it could be the Quran.
Yeah.
Because when there is that moral framework or social regulatory behaviors from citizens, that's when they tend to be less prone to conflicts, tendencies, or vices or recruitment into some gangsters, vigilante groups to cause mayhem and things. So, in a way, we are aligned to some religious books or writings which will help shape your social framework worldview and mindset and social behavior.
Yeah.
It helps instigate us to achieve our purpose in life and also seek for the welfare for others. Because when you know that, for instance, the Bible is saying, love your neighbor as yourself, I don't think you want to do things as a political leader or a citizen which will cause your neighbor or citizen pain, hurt, majority will be suffering. I don't think it will be prudent. So now that we are developing as youth, we need to get that orientation and that moral organization of our life to put our lives in perspective towards achieving our dreams.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, see, many people think to develop our countries and Africa that the government would do it. I don't believe so. It's not the work of the government to build a country. It's the work of government to create the enabling environment to allow you and me to start doing things. Okay. Yes, I know our governments are not creating the best environment, but there are things that people can still do today, no matter how hard it is. There are things that people can do today. You are doing your own, okay? So young Africans what they can do to impact their communities.
Thank you very much. And I actually like this session or question because it's one of the main reasons why some youth on the continent, especially in comparison with other parts of the world, feel the sense of despair or loss of hope for the future. So to motivate or to encourage all of us, I will say African youth or young men and women should try and educate themselves. We should try and get education. It's mostly said from our Ghanaian perspective that education is the key.
Yeah,
And
it
sometimes
is.
some people joke with it by saying now the door has been changed. So you have the key and there is no door that the key is opening, but at least try and educate. And we shouldn't restrict our education. For instance, my field, right, this is in the area of international affairs and diplomacy, and it gives me a global perspective or international views to study other areas and other parts of the world. So we shouldn't restrict ourselves. We should educate ourselves, add more value to ourselves, and it will open doors and opportunities for us. We should also try and get involved, like you said, either by talking, by writing, whatever, if it's peaceful protest, whatever. We shouldn't say, oh, there are some people, even when it gets to electioneering period in Africa, they say, I'm not voting, I'm tired, we have been voting year in, year out, we don't see the dividends, we don't see the benefits. We need political representatives to champion our goals, vision, and agenda. So if you don't take part and the bad person is selected or elected into power, the decisions and the actions they take will consequently come and affect you. So we should get involved. No matter how
Yeah,
you get involved,
yeah,
either by writing, by talking, whatever you do, you should get involved at the community level, at the national level, at the grassroots level. Everywhere you find yourself, just get yourself. And we should try
yeah,
also network. We should build good networking opportunities. We should identify mentors and try and understudy them. I have a lot of people mentoring me, and it has paved way for me to have other opportunities. As I mentioned, I work with some stakeholders in the AU, ECOWAS, UN, and all these things came about through my networking. So the
very
more you
good.
network and even getting to meet someone like you, giving me this platform, maybe after having this podcast, other people will also engage me and the network keeps going and it's paving. And we should try and stay informed. The only way
Yeah,
you read books, read that, yeah, we should read. They say readers are leaders, so you should read
oh
if
yeah,
you want to stay informed. Because when you try and stay informed, that's when you try and understand the dynamics, the trends, the patterns, and you try and really understand the complexities and the nuances in some government decisions, some decisions by the juntas and all those things, the geopolitics and how it's
yeah,
influencing international relations and everything. It comes by reading. You
yeah.
can't just be there and be. I'm not saying social media is bad, but it seems a lot of youth on the continent they are swayed away by social media
Social media, yeah, yeah.
spending much time involved or adding more value to our lives. So at least we should try and get informed by reading fast and wide.
Wow. See, I'm telling you, your advice is very different from most of my guests, but I tell you, it's as valuable as start a business. No, see, knowledge. They say knowledge is power, and people think it's just a cliche, but I know it's not. The only thing I have is my desire to know. I'm telling you, that's the only thing I have. My desire to know. And it has opened many, many doors just by asking questions. And it has opened a lot of doors for me. And it will also open a lot of doors for many, many young Africans if they have that desire to know. And of course, the only way you know things that didn't happen around you is either read a book, read an article, or watch a video. Okay, so reading is my passion. Reading. See, if you see my room, books everywhere. This table, I have books everywhere. So yeah, I love your advice. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Ebenezer, my last question. What's your vision for Africa in the next 20, 30 years' time?
Thank you for this question. I envisage an Africa of robust democracy and development, economic development and social development. Because like I hinted earlier, we have the resources, we have the population. Our population too is youthful. And so now there is a wave of awakeness driving or spreading across the African continent, which is putting governments on their toes to be more accountable, to institute policies and programs which will be more innovative. Because now we are in a world of technology and even AIs, and you need to be very innovative. You don't need to get stuck to the manual or old ways of doing things. So I see an African becoming very innovative and very inclusive, because you have to include all segments of the population, including people with disability, having gender mainstreaming in your policies. And with that, we will see that there will be a lot of improvements in our social and economic development, and there will be improved security too. So with this sense of awareness, seeing what is happening in other countries, I think the youth is now putting much pressure through protests. It happened in Kenya. They put protests on the government through protests, and some decisions were resigned or uh, reversed by the government to impose some taxes on the citizens. It also happened in Nigeria. Through their protests, the government have reversed and cut down some of its major expenses, including travel, awakeness that is going around the continent. I think there will be some robustness in the democracy we are seeing, although many people suggest that with this current trend of democracy decline we are witnessing in the Sahel region, other parts of the continent, the trend will continue. I don't see it that way. I see an African very improved, very developed, very progressive because of the prospects we have as a continent.
Wow. Ebenezer, see, I'm so glad we had the time today. I know we have had to postpone 4 times. Anyway, see, we have actually had the conversation today. I'm so happy. Thank you very much for being such a great guest of the Think Big for Africa podcast.
Thank you very much for the honor and the privilege.
All right.
I hope to attend it next time.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.